Hello everyone! Thanks so much for stopping by the channel today. This is Tina, the Scrappin' Rabbit, and in today's video we're going to be creating a couple spooktacular Halloween cards featuring the Welcome Home stamp set featuring these adorable little critters and the new Halloween mandala stencil, which is fantastic and spooktacular. So the first thing that I like to do when creating my cards is stamp my images to color, and I like to emboss them, so I'm going to use some VersaFine black ink on some Copic friendly paper since I'm going to be coloring with Copics today. So once I stamp my images down, I like to heat emboss them using some clear embossing powder. So I just get that over my images really well, and then I heat up my heat tool for a few seconds, getting it nice and hot, and then melt that powder. I just love the way that it looks with the added dimensions, and as long as you are not going over the lines with your Copic markers, you can color just fine with them. So the first image here is this adorable little mummy bunny, and I'm a really slow colorist, so I do like to take my time. It's something very enjoyable for me, but I'm just using the warm grays to add a little of that white and color to the bandages, and I'm using the W3s, the W1, the W0, and the W00. I do like to go over my images twice, so once I go through the process of using all of the colors, I will go over the second time. I really find that the second time that you go around with your Copics, that's when you get a lot of the depth and the dimension, and the colors just really start to pop. It probably took me a good 30 minutes to color all of the little images. The little bunny is going to be a little brown bunny with the E42, the E41, and the E43. And once I get that little bunny colored in, he's pretty easy because he's just got his little face peeking through and a little ear. So not too much to do there, but a lot of times it can be tricky to get something to look white, and the warm grays I think work perfectly for that little image. For the little hedgehog, I'm going to use the E44, E43, E42, E41, and the E40. So dark to light, going from the outside his little spiky hair to the center of him with the E41 and the E40, blending it all out. So many little details on these images don't require that much coloring at all, just little dots here and there, but I do like to get that second layer on there. And then once I have the second layer, I can move on to his little body, the E42, the E41, and the E40. And I love just watching the little critter come to life as you add the different layers of shading and coloring to his little face and his little expression there. So I think I'm going to add some RV00 there for the little tiny cheeks and blend it out with an RV0000. And then now it's time to move on to the little hat, and I'm going to use purples for it. The darkest shade is going to be V17, then blending out with the V15, and then the lightest shade is V12. I'm also going to add some gold stars to the hat. Again, I'm going to put on that first layer and then go back over for a second layer. And then that's when all of the depth starts to appear, especially when you add that dark color again. So darn cute. For the little stars, I'm going to use the I think that was the Y15 and the Y11. Just two colors. The stars are really small, and then the little band around the hat, I'm going to use my tonal grays. Going dark to light from the outside of the band towards the center. So again, it took me a good half an hour to color all of these images, so I just have a little bit of it on film for you. So here are all the little critters all nicely colored, and I think they turned out so adorable. I'm going to use my scan and cut to cut them out, and here are all the little images for my cards. So now it's time to move on to the background panels using the stencil. I'm going to go for a double ombre effect. I'm going to use my mini distress inks. You can use your distress oxides. I don't have all the colors in the oxides, so I'm going to go with my minis today. It does take a little bit more work to use the distress inks. You do have to go over it quite a few times, but the layering of the colors is just beautiful. I do love the way that the Distress inks look over the oxides, but the oxides are definitely easier to blend. So I'm going to use a trio of these oranges. The colors are the Crackling Campfire, the Carved Pumpkin, and the Dried Marigold. And then I'm going dark to light. For the purples, I'm using the Dusty Concord, the Wilted Violet, and the Milled Lavender. My Dusty Concord definitely needs a refill. It was a little on the dry side, so it took a little bit of extra power there to get that color on. But it did turn out, and so I was very happy with the results. That's a color I don't have in the oxide yet, so another reason why I went to my minis. So once I get my second color on there, I just blend it out, and then oftentimes I'll go back with the darker color. Every time that you do another layer, the color gets deeper and richer, and then it blends even nicer. The lightest color there is the Milled Lavender. So once I get to the center of the panel, I'm not going to cross the colors because I don't want to mix the orange with the purple because I will get like a brown color. So I'm kind of leaving a teeny tiny strip of that white in the center, giving it that double ombre effect. And with the orange and the purple, I just think that that looks fantastic for a Halloween card. So just finishing up my blending, getting the colors the way I want, and then now my panel is done, and I think it turned out so pretty. I'm going to go ahead and heat set it with my heat tool because I am going to use Distress Oxide over the top of it, and I don't want it to blend. So I like the oxides because it will sit on top of my panel, on top of the Distress ink colors, especially if I have them nice and dried. I'm going to use my little board here with the magnets to hold my stencil down. It does a pretty good job. I don't have any of that spray. That's one of the things that I have on my crafting wish list. I see lots of people using that. But I'm going to go ahead and use a soft blending brush and my Distress Oxide in the black soot to go over the pattern of the stencil onto my Distress inked panel. And I'm just getting in there all those little teeny tiny crevices, like the little eyes of the bat. I'm just trying to make sure that I get the little black to go into those little tiny areas. I really like the shape of this stencil. I like how it's round. It's not going to show that it's round on the cards, the design of my card for today, but I do want to use the stencil again, showing that rounded edge. Once I have the entire stencil colored in with the black soot, I'm going to take a little peek on each side just to make sure I got good coverage, and there it is. I think it turned out so fantastic. I die cut the panel with a stitched rectangle die, and now I'm just going around the edges with the black soot to kind of give it a framed look. Once I have that all inked up, I'm going to go ahead and stamp and emboss the sentiment. I chose the Have a Spooktacular Halloween sentiment. It's a long sentiment. I'm going to go ahead and use Versamark ink with some white embossing powder, heat emboss that, and then cut it out with a banner die, and that is what I'm going to use for the sentiment for the card. For the final piece of my card, I cut out some grass in black cardstock. That gives my little critters something to stand on so that they're not just floating on the background. I couldn't decide if I wanted the orange on the top or the orange on the bottom, so I went ahead and made one of each. When I do create, I do try to do 2 cards at a time because it honestly doesn't take that much more work to do a second card when you're already putting one together. So now I'm just going to pop up all the images on some double-sided adhesive foam. I do like to use liquid glue to adhere my layers, and I cut out a black cardstock frame. I am going to use a white card base that is going to tie in with the white trim around my critters. These are a top folding base, and I'm going to go ahead and glue all my layers down. When I remember to, I like to glue all the layers down initially. That way I can press down so that they're nice and flat. It's hard to do that if you already have your embellishments on there. Now it's time to just figure out where all these cute little critters are going to go and how I'm going to arrange them on my cards. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off all the tape. stick all those adorable images down, and then that is going to make 2 Spooktacular Halloween cards. I love the way that the sentiment and the critters look when they are popped up on the foam tape. It gives it that extra little dimension. And then now that I have everything glued down, it's time for that finishing touch. I'm just going to add a few gems to each one of the cards and glue it down with some liquid glue just to give a little bit of sparkle. And that completes my 2 cards using the new Welcome Home stamps and the Halloween Mandala stencil. Thanks so much for stopping by the channel. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Till next time, happy crafting. Bye for now.